Hey there, this is Dr. Pam Perry. So today we're going to talk about race. Is it still really a thing? I mean, we've got a black woman as a vice president now, and we've had a black president, but are things still really the same? We're going to talk about systemic racism and the DEI. I heard that Elon Musk was saying DEI must die. I'm like, what is that about? So we have someone that is going to be expert. She wrote a book called The Intimacy of Race, Eva Medilek, and we're going to talk about how to move from subconscious racism, which is really important, to active allyship for people of privilege. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper about what does that really mean, people of privilege, and what does allyship really mean. So we're going to have an interesting conversation. It won't be textbook sounding, but it will be something that you're going to want to watch again. And so, right after this, I'll read her bio about who Eva is and bring her up. All righty, we'll take care. Make sure you share it out. Hey, so this is Eva. I do actually have her live, but she was in the issue of New York Weekly. She has also been part of the Speak, Sell, Shine group, which we had in October at the Press Club. Maybe she'll tell you a little bit about that as well. But we'll mostly talk about her book and really give you really a glimpse into why she's doing this type of work and why she is really, I would say, anointed to do this work, because she'll give you a little bit about her dad. If you remember, even remember that picture, so I'm gonna bring that up about your dad and how that was part of your legacy. But she's an author, speaker, and facilitator. Eva is, and she's a certified high performance coach, international speaker, and number one best-selling author, and inclusivity trainer. And so, really, the book we're going to be talking about is how to move from unconscious racism. What does that mean? And then, really, she's an advocate for inclusive environments. Really, diversity inclusion is one of those buzzwords, especially after George Floyd was murdered, how companies stepped up and said that they wanted to do that. She's been featured in Speakers Magazine in the December issue. So I put the link down there so you can kind of read a little bit about it. And you can also see her speaker reel. That's there as well inside Speakers Magazine. So she was in this issue in December. And so take a look at her reel and you can read all about her bio. So enough of that. I'm going to just bring her up so you can actually hear who Eva is. Yay! Hi, Eva. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good, good, good. So, one of the first things I want to say is that I love your background. That is so cool. Your branding is on point. Even your one sheet. We talked about, the information in the book. That is part of really when you're stepping out doing something new. Uh, because you had another career before you really started doing this. You want to give us a little bit of background snippet of what your background was and how you led into the work that you're doing right now.
Oh, goodness. I had so many midlife crises and reinventions up until now. But really, I started out literally in the dental field. So I was a dental hygienist, and then the entrepreneurial bug hit. It had to hit when I was downsized back in 2010. And I
Mhm.
became a real estate investor. And that's when I really fell in love with coaching. And I'll tell
Ah,
you why. I was still working as a hygienist. I was building an entrepreneurial business like a lot of us who are entrepreneurs start out. It's a side hustle until we can match that income, right? And in the
mhm.
meantime, we are working ourselves to death and we are doing everything we can, working a full time job, building a business. I know as a woman, I was doing the cooking, the shopping, the laundry, all of it. And I just got burnt out. And the
Mhm.
burnout really affected my health. It affected my attitude. It affected my relationship with my husband. And the the life-changing point of that was when our marriage was in serious trouble due to betrayal.
Yeah.
And we had to really figure out what the next right action would be for us. And we knew that, who we were being as we were building was not, we were not showing up as our best selves. And that's when I
Mhm.
really got into coaching, into high performance coaching. And so, well, we hired coaches, we hired therapists. I had a relationship coach, a
Yeah.
performance coach, everything to get my life back on track and to save my marriage. And,
Mhm. Mhm.
I would say I didn't save it. I said I built a new marriage with the same man.
Yeah. And you talk about it in this particular article as
I
well,
do.
the one that's in the New York Weekly. And
Mhm,
people can actually get that. We could scan the code. I could actually probably scan the code and they can read the link to it as well.
mhm,
But do you want to mention who you are married to? Because we're talking about the intimacy of race and why that's
mhm.
important. You were born in DC area.
No, New Jersey.
You're born in New Jersey. I knew it was like east, and
Yeah,
now you live out west.
I
So
live in
you live in the
California.
yeah,
Yeah.
you live in the San Francisco area or San Francisco
Yeah, you're
Bay.
right. The Bay
Yeah.
Area. I'm in Berkeley, not too far from
Yes.
UC Berkeley, actually. We can walk to.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about how diverse is that area. Berkeley is, especially from New Jersey, a little bit more diversity, I guess you would say, than Berkeley. But you were in this California area, and you're
Yeah,
married, and your husband is not
he's
black but
German. He's
German.
German. Yeah, he's Eastern European. And, and I had two children from my first marriage.
Hmm.
When we moved out here, we were really intentional in making sure we moved into a diverse area because my children had friends of every different nationality you can imagine, and I didn't want them to lose that. And so we really scoped out the area. We were crazy stalkers in the high school. My youngest daughter was still in high school, so we would park outside high schools and see what kind of children walked out, what color they were. And we went
It's
to one
important.
area, and my husband, who's blonde hair and blue eyed, he goes, "Too many blondes here. We're not living in this town." And then I went to Oakland. I was like, "Nah, that's not happening." And then
Right.
Berkeley had such a mix of cultural
Hmm.
identities that we were like, "This is it." And we actually ended up buying a house about 3 or 4 blocks from the high school, so my daughter could walk to school. And her friends were from Zimbabwe, um, Costa Rica, India.
Okay.
And I think she was one of two Americans in that clique that she was with. And I was like, that's it. I want them to have cultural diversity and
Hmm.
experiences in their lives because
Hmm.
my parents didn't. And I knew that some of the stereotypes that they were holding against people was because they didn't know people.
Yeah,
They didn't,
and
didn't know. And
right.
they didn't have that
And
opportunity.
that's one of the things. If you don't know certain people from different races, you will make a prejudgment, and that's where prejudice comes from. And so you met your husband while you were traveling.
In New York, no, we were just. And I dated his best friend, but that's another story.
Okay, all right. That's a whole nother book.
That's a
Okay,
whole other story.
I hope are they
But
still
that's how I
friends?
met him.
That's
Oh
interesting.
my God,
So
they're still best friends. He was at our
okay,
wedding.
okay,
It
all
just,
right. So you're used to making things that are difficult blend, okay? Blend and work out. So let's talk about your dad because you were saying your parents they didn't grow up there, but I remember you posted a picture. You're also part of our Ready Set Go Speak community as
yes.
well, and so when you posted a picture in that community. It talked about your dad 2 days before Dr. Martin Luther King. So how did he get to that point where he's on the same stage with him?
Well, he was his bodyguard.
Ah, I
He
didn't
was
know
his
that.
bodyguard. Now, my dad went on the police force the year I was born in 1960, and he was one of a handful of Black police. We were Negroes back then. He was
Mhm.
one of a handful of Negro officers, and none of the white officers would ride in the squad car with him. So he had to ride the motorcycle. And every day they would tell him, "I hope you crash. I hope you die." He was just taunted. And my dad grew up in Jim Crow South and
Mhm.
moved up to New Jersey, met my mom, and created this amazing creature here. And the rest is history. But he dealt with a lot in the 1960s, which is the height of civil rights
Mhm.
movements. Now, he was not a plainclothes officer, but when Dr. King came to town, I think it was the last week in March, because he was
Mhm.
assassinated the first week
April.
in April in
Mhm.
1968. I was 8 years old, and he and another Black officer were called in, and they knew that there were threats against Dr. King's life, and they didn't want to put any of their white officers in harm's way. So they
Mhm.
asked my dad and another officer to put on their plain clothes and to go
Mhm.
to the church where Dr. King was appearing. And
That was the picture we
and
saw.
and that
Yeah.
was the picture, and it's like huge. It's been really blown up, and I used to take it. I used to take the Polaroid to school for show and tell.
Mhm.
After Dr. King was assassinated, that Polaroid had been here, there, everywhere, not realizing, at my young age, the significance. I was told this was an important man back then.
Right.
And,
Mhm.
and that's the picture we took everywhere. And that's,
So I always say that things that happen to us at a young age really stick with us. So
Mhm.
you went on, you had another career really as a, in the dental field, but it came back to talking about race and that that stuck with you. So give us a little bit about how you realize that shift and how it's now really your life work and your life mission, I guess you would say.
After hearing my dad tell me stories of his time on the police force, his time as a young Black boy in North Carolina, how he served in the Army, how, going up in the train, as soon as they crossed the Mason-Dixon line, he had to go to the back of the train, like hearing
Hmm.
all of those
Isn't that
stories.
crazy? Right.
I never realized the significance of it. And then when George Floyd was murdered, honestly, Pam, I didn't think anything of it. I was like so used to hearing Black men being murdered by the police that it didn't phase me one bit. I was numb to it. And then I realized, wait a second, why is this story getting so much attention? Why is it in the news every day? Because we were all home because of COVID anyway. So we were
Mhm.
watching the news. And so I was like, all right, I'll watch the video. And when I watched the video, something inside me broke. I broke
Mhm.
wide open, and I could not
Mhm.
stop crying for
Mhm.
weeks. And to
Mhm.
my husband's credit,
Mhm.
he never said anything to me like, it's going to be okay. He,
Right.
he just held me. He
Mhm.
just held me. And I'm like, thank God I don't have to explain to you what this means to people of color
Mhm.
and how this is
Mhm.
affecting us. And I just knew that I couldn't go on business as usual,
Mhm.
like this never happened. And I
Mhm.
felt called to do something. And
Mhm.
without knowing what, I noticed that people of white skinned individuals, white bodied individuals, I should say, were trying to be allies, but they were kind of messing it up.
Mhm.
And they
Yeah.
were getting canceled. And I'm like, why are we canceling people that want to help and
They don't know
not,
what to do.
you know,
Right. They don't
and
have any.
not
Yeah.
leading them to resources to help them? And that's why I decided to create a resource. I had a Facebook group. I hosted an online forum for people to come and listen to what Black women had to say about this. And it was just amazing. And that's how it opened up for me.
And then you also had an event that led to this book.
Yeah, it was called the Allyship Awareness Forum. And it
Mhm.
was a
Mhm.
listen and learn event with leading women of color.
And so this book is really for the people who attended the forum, and really it was about those who are white want to figure out how we can really stop this because Black people, like you said, from the 60s, even before then, we've been marching, we've been doing, we got laws, we got Al Sharpton now. I mean, Jesse Jackson. So we've been talking about this for a while, but until they get involved in it, the whole systemic part of it won't go away. And
It's
so
a all hands on deck. We need
that.
everybody that we can to join
Mhm.
in this fight. And making people wrong, shaming, blaming, guilting is not going to bring us all together. It's going to keep that
Right.
gap.
Right. And this is you talk about how so from one area you went into high performance coaching and how well first of all tell us the difference between what is the difference between high achievers and high performers so that we kind of know the difference about what high performance coaching is.
Yeah, well, high achievers will work themselves to death, you know. We've all been there.
Those are the perfectionists. Those are the people that I want to get everything right. And yeah, yeah,
We
yeah.
don't
The
stop
overthinkers.
at
Yes.
all costs, and we usually end up burnt out, overwhelmed, and exhausted. And you know, most people look at high achievers as that high-end executive with the office view of the city and the corner office and all of that, and just workaholics. And that's pretty much the high achieving piece. As a high performer, you are basically achieving success without sacrificing your personal life. So you are
Okay.
taking care of your health, you're taking care of your well-being, you're nourishing your relationships, and you have habits that support that and bring you, you know, that career advancement and that success. So basically, you're not doing it all. You're really learning what it takes to show up as your best self on your A game at home, at work, in your communities, without sacrificing what's important to you in the process. So it's really creating that both and high achievers, it's either or, you know, either
Mhm.
I'm doing this or that. And we're just
Right.
looking at, I don't like to use the word balance because balance is not equal. It's going to look like
Or
this, it's going to be
like a
crazy.
blend. Yeah, like a
Mhm.
blend.
Exactly.
It's like a lot of high achievers wear busy as a badge. So it's like, "Oh, how you doing? I'm busy. I'm
Yeah.
busy."
Yeah.
Like that's a reward badge. Like,
Yeah. I'm
no,
good, but really busy. And you
I'm
just feel
really
the heaviness.
yeah, and it's like that's not good. So really the whole point of really a high performer is someone who is achieving joy, happiness, blending, enjoying their life and not really burning themselves out. And so how did that part of your career training and certification help you with what the work that you're doing now, the training and the speaking?
Well, I believe you can't be a high performer unless you're incorporating inclusivity.
Mm,
And you also can't perform as a high performer if you're not feeling safe and included. And
that's true.
so the opportunity path, high performance is basically reserved for people of privilege. Historically, you have opportunities for education, you have opportunities for funding, you have opportunities for support and coaching and mentorship so that you can ride the ladder of success in your job, in your business, in corporate. And I think now that inclusivity is the new high performance because we want to open up that opportunity path for talent that is often unseen,
Mm,
overlooked, for
mhm,
talent that may not know how to communicate their value because of the cultural differences. You know,
yeah.
in a lot of cultures, you're not, you know, it doesn't look good to brag on yourself, to
Mhm,
to tout your talents.
mhm.
And a lot of talent is being overlooked because leaders don't know how to notice that and how to give people the support, training, and mentorship they need so that they can have that same opportunity path to be the CEO.
As we go into Black History Month, just a little quick Black History Month for both of us because we're probably the same age. So typically now we're in a generation where we have gone to college, probably post college and that sort of thing. And our maybe our parents didn't. Maybe our parents they graduated from high school, but maybe their parents didn't. So my grandparents didn't finish high school, but my parents did. They finished high school, then I finished college. So it's really like I'm the first generation to really go to college and then also work a professional job. Most of the people in my family were probably blue collar workers, and I'm up north. So a lot of people came from the south and worked to north, great
Mhm.
migration, working in the factory. So that created a middle class, but it was still racist. But anyway, so before the my grandparents, a lot of people can't really even understand what that means. They may have been either sharecroppers or the great grandparents could have been slaves. So we're not talking too many generations out of that. So when we talk about the privilege, I think the book you said that these are people of privilege. It's not that we're saying that it's all white people, but those people that's just 2 or 3 generations back, their ancestors were slaves. So that means when they died, they didn't pass anything on. They didn't pass along the farm.
Mhm.
They didn't pass along the 40 acres and the mule. They passed it. So that means every generation had to start with
Actually,
zero.
we still have our 40 acres in North Carolina.
Oh my God.
We
Oh my
do,
God.
we do. We have to pay the taxes on it every year. You know, I knew
That's legacy then.
my great great grandmother, who was born into slavery, was my
Mhm.
maternal grandmother's grandmother. And I remember saying to my grandmother, I'm like, how could a grandma have a grandma? You're a grandma. You have a
Right.
grandma. Like, it
Right.
didn't make any sense to me. And I knew her up until, I think she passed away when I was like 14 or 15. So I really knew this woman, and it was just amazing being in her presence, knowing what she had to come through. But when
Mhm.
you talk about privilege, with all of the political trauma that's happening in the world today, whether it's race, gender identity, wars in Ukraine, wars in the area of Gaza, all of those things, transgendered issues, LGBTQ issues, abortion issues, whatever it is, if you are not affected by those issues, that may be even immigration, right? If you're not affected and you're not worried about your family, your ancestors emigrating, if you're not worried about your safety, your family in war, you have a level of privilege. So we all have a level of privilege that's not necessarily tied to race and gender. And when people show up to work wearing the heaviness of the latest news bombshell, for example, when the war started in the Israeli Gaza area, and as leaders in our companies, you don't address those people, their concerns, don't acknowledge what they're going through, people can't show up as their best if they don't feel that you care. Now, it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily mean that you're taking sides, but from a human level, with all the funding being stripped from a lot of DE&I initiatives, and Elon Musk is saying, it's racist, and Florida just had a thing where they're not supporting schools in DE&I and all of that. Now it's up to us as individuals to really integrate it as a part of our culture and be conscious and acknowledge what people with different lived experiences are going
Mhm.
through during these periods of political unrest and turmoil, LGBTQ, immigration, all of that.
Do you remember when people thought that in order to solve this racism that we were experiencing, especially in urban areas for whatever reason? And I remember in Detroit that they said, well, all they have to do is have them be around each other. So during a period of time, they had busing. They were busing Black kids from one school to another. And they said that if we have them just know each other, integrate with each other, that this will be okay. And it happened. Some kids got bused from their neighborhood school, which they
Mhm.
could have been to a school walk in 5 minutes, but then they were bused like 15 minutes the other way. And then the white kids was bused to the bus. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It did not work. You can't legislate hearts. You can't legislate to make people want to be certain things. It is a deeper conversation. It is about the intimacy. It's about really getting to know each other and really understanding. Social media does help in a way, but I think when you said some of the things that is subconscious racism, it's because no one is around them to make it conscious. Like that's a racist thing to say, or that is not the right way to think about it.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
do think
We
that.
have to be able to call it out, but call it out in a manner that has an intent to make people aware and help
Mhm.
them learn without shaming, blaming, and guilting people. I mean, you and I, how many times has somebody called us intelligent or articulate as a so-called compliment,
Right.
thinking that they were naturally complimenting us without seeing the underlying bias underneath saying that statement to a person of color.
Right? It's like, "Oh, you're pretty for a Black girl," or something like that. It's like, "Oh, oh my god." And my daughter My daughter has said that she went to a school primarily, white, and they would say that to her that she's pretty for black girls. And growing up, I mean, how does somebody deal with that? Well, one of the things that's happening right now, and I want to get your take on it. I feel that African American men, specifically young men, say in their 20s, have a harder time of really getting employment than say the girls do, the African American girls. I don't know why that is. I'm trying to explain it, but I know that the young men that I know, whether it's godsons or just young men that I know in my family, that they have a harder time than the girls. The girls come out of college and they get the jobs. Whereas the young African American men it's taking a long time. And so part of it is like, do they feel like they get a twofer when they hire a black woman? They hire a woman, so that solves that problem. And they hire a black. So
Uh-huh.
when they hired a black woman, that's a 2 for 1 versus like just a
Yeah, we
black
we got it
male.
covered. We got it covered. And there's that
Yeah.
gap between having a diversity hire and having that hire be included in the opportunity path that all of the other people of privilege might have access to. Having never really been a black man, I can only guess that there's still that stereotype of fear.
Yeah.
I've been in communities where white women have spoken up and said that they're afraid of black men. There's
Yeah.
this fear. There's a really
And it
and
was the same thing with George Floyd. He was very gentle, but he was big. And people were
yeah,
just really
yeah,
afraid of him
yeah.
because he was big. And
Well,
women
that's
are
been a deep ingrained stereotype from back when. What was it? The that 19 early 1900s silent movie. Oh gosh, the name is escaping me, but where they made the black man the villain and
mhm,
everybody was
mhm.
scared of them because they're raping our white women. Like,
Yeah, yeah, and that really that stereotype through media has made that it's still happening
mhm,
today, but it
forever.
was started back then, and
Yeah.
so, in a way, the black men in terms of the totem pole are always last, and then that makes it frustrating for a lot of African American men that wanna do right, and then sometimes it's like, "You know what? I'm not." And so
It's
it said,
it's
"Well, it's more black
frustrating.
men." Yeah, it's more black men in jail, da, da, this and that. Well, they were trying to do it the right way, trying to do it that way. And
Hmm.
then they just said, you know what? I still need to provide for my family. I still need to, I need to make money. I need to do whatever. And maybe they'll do things illegal just because the frustration. And so I never really thought about it because, like you said, I've never been a black male, but
My
the
heart
black,
breaks for them. I
yeah,
really did because I never really understood what our men go through
yeah.
until I mean George Floyd's murder was a 2 by 4 upside my head to wake
Hmm.
up to
Hmm.
what was really really happening because we come with our own stereotypes and prejudices that we got from society from going to school. It seeps into us as well. Where they're shiftless, they're lazy, they're not doing their best,
And
and
it's
they're
always
just starting so far behind.
right, and it was always in terms of the people that were murdered were typically black men. We said Black Lives Matter, and then we had the whole march, and it wasn't just George Floyd. It was 4 people. It was Freddie. It was so many people. Baltimore.
I was like, another one? Why are they making a big deal out of this one? It just
Yeah,
didn't compute
it
to
was a lot. It was very few women, but mostly it was always black men. And so it really even goes into like the workplace where the hiring managers, if they have to make a choice, there it's the prejudice of I'm
yeah.
gonna go with the woman. And
Have
that's
you seen
really
Origins yet?
pardon me?
Have you seen Origins? Ava
No,
DuVernay's. Watch
no.
it. Watch it. Go to
I
the movies. Have a date night. That's what I did, and it's based on Isabel Wilkerson and
oh yeah.
her writing of the book Cast and her research and
Wow.
yeah, it's a wow. But I want to share something with you before your show ends here,
Mhm.
because this is a research poll that I just learned about. So if I were to ask you, what do you think the percentage is of Black women who feel that they have white allies at work? Anywhere between 0 and 100%. What would you guess?
That have women.
White white allies at work.
I would say they probably would say less than 10%.
Okay.
And those are people, when I say allies, that I'm thinking, I'm defining ally as someone who goes to bat for them,
Yeah,
who
sticks
mentors
up for them.
them,
Mhm.
someone who is like their sponsor,
That
their
opportunity
coach.
path.
Yes, their coach,
Yeah,
the person who can go into places for them that they probably can't go, and vouch
exactly.
for them. Though I would say less than 10%.
Now, what do you think is the percentage of white women who feel that they are allies to their Black and brown colleagues at work?
Not knowing that, I would say they probably think that they are an ally just by just hiring them, that they think that they're their ally.
Mhm.
'Cause I
So
hired you.
give a guess of a percentage.
I'd say 50%.
Okay. So you are spot on with the Black women. It's about 10%.
Mhm.
Latina women, about 19%. The white women who think they're allies, and they really didn't do Black men or Latinx men because, or other nationalities because of the small sample size. But the women, the white women who feel that they are allies, 81%.
Wow. 81%. So they just think they are just walking in allyship, meaning, and they can't, because if they look at even like the C-suite, the black
You see
people
the
and the people, they're
such a
not there.
disconnect.
Right.
Such
So
a
how are they
disconnect.
getting promoted? I guess they figure they're not getting promoted because they don't want to be there, right? So that's
I
one of the main.
listen. This survey was done by Lean In and Survey Monkey. But yeah, there's such a wide disconnect between white people who feel that they're being allies and showing up as allies, and the people who have been historically underserved and historically minoritized, that feel that they do have allies at work. And so there's a wide gap between having diversity and being included and
Is
having.
that the kind of work that you do when you go into corporations, and what primarily some of the places where you speak, Eva?
I speak a lot with colleges,
Okay.
and the educators to help the educators to support student success among their diverse student population. So mostly the local, regional,
Mm-hmm.
community type colleges where they have a higher percentage of a wide range of diversity
Yeah,
in
because
there.
if not, students will drop out, basically.
Exactly, and it has to do with retention and
Right.
success and really preparing them to be successful in school and outside of school. And I also, one of my other people that I support is Fidelity. And so they have worldwide presence, and we do
Mhm.
diversity and inclusion training with them as well. And hoping to get into more, but it's, I feel now that especially some of the education schools typically don't have money, and so they're really going to be cutting back. So that's why I know that even doing this training is going to help people show up individually in their own leadership to be
Mhm.
inclusive.
Yeah, and it is a business uh, advantage to have a diverse thought,
Hmm.
and to really, in the worst case scenario, if you are always having turnover among your African American community, your black community, whatever you want to call yourselves, it's because something is wrong, right? It's not like they just don't like you, but you're probably doing something that is um not uh, not that they're going to start a lawsuit, but the worst case scenario is like, oh my God, we've got lawsuits, things. What are we going to do? So diversity training, DEIB, and all the other letters that they want to add with it. But it's just really to, to
Inclusion
add.
and belonging. Well, because
Right.
you want to, attract talented people, you want to retain talented people. But if you look at diversity and inclusion as a means to an end, you're not looking at it right. You've got to look at it in a way that supports your customers, your clients. When they see people that represent them, you're going to make more money in your business.
Yeah.
They feel that you hear them, you have representation for
Yeah.
them. And so it's a win-win. A rising tide will raise all boats, right?
That's it. That is so true. It will increase profits. And that's how things are motivated by money. So if you have people that look like the people you're serving, then they will feel that they want that you have representation and you will shop there, you support there and that kind of thing. And that's really, really good. So people can go to I put your website up there, Eva Medilek. So you see how it's like media, but not media, but LEK at the end of it. So that you make sure go to Speakers Magazine, the December issue. Watch her speaker reel. It's at the bottom of her page there. And then also to New York Weekly. And you also were in Kibo Daily as well. So I
Yes,
think I
I
put
was in
that, I
Keeper
think I put that link up
Daily.
there as well. So a lot of different places where you're getting a lot of shine. And so hopefully, are you doing any events this year? Any?
I'm not hosting any events, but what I am doing, I'm coming out with an online home study course for the work that I do and the skills that I teach so that we can take this on individually. I want everybody to have access to this and not wait for their company to sponsor it, the company to bring in
Yeah.
DEI officers, because that's all going away. And so I'll be launching that in March. So I'm
Oh,
excited
good.
about that. Yes.
Good, good. That is good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been a part of Speak Sell Shine. You're part of Ready Set Go Speak. You want to tell a little bit about what that is or what you're getting out of it? It's kind of like the push from Pam all the time.
I have to tell you, it was such an amazing event. And I know that it was something that you launched in October. And I was really eager. You know, I've been following you forever, girl. So it was really fun to finally get a chance to be in your world, to see the magic that you create in helping people be seen and speak
Mhm.
and be seen and shine, if you will. And the training that Pam and her team gave us and the assets that we came away with were just undeniable, off the charts, everything. And they did it all for you. And they did it just so beautifully and so professionally. And now that we get that next step, that next level is to stay in the community and get access to opportunities where we
Mhm.
can speak and shine and just be out there, because you know you got to be seen or nobody knows that you're out there. Nobody knows what you're doing. That is just simple 101. And so Pam will push you, write this article, do this thing, apply to this, go,
Apply
go,
to
go,
that.
go,
Right,
go.
right.
She's,
Like
she's,
apply to this.
she's back there just pushing you to be out there and shine like we all need to do.
Yeah. And I did the other day in the Ready Set Go Speak community. I put in a lot of different media opportunities for podcasts and different media outlets, blogs, awards to apply for. I mean, those are things, those are the credibility markers that the media looks for. They just look for it. And it's like we think that, that they don't look for it, but if they're trying to figure out who to put on the next show or who to they're gonna Google and your stuff got to
They
show
gotta,
up. And
they
and
gotta,
you've got it. They're gonna look for a one sheet, they're gonna look for a speaker reel, they're gonna look for media. I mean, so my main thing is that you have all of that. So now we also have this podcast. So you can actually share this out as well. So you could talk about your work and the reason why you do the work, because that's what's really important, because you can hear your passion about it. And it sounds like you could talk about it all day.
oh yeah,
I want to just give people a snippet of it, but that's one of the things. But the book is really kind of like a workbook. So it'll be actually, this will be part of a course that you can take.
and it's so easily digestible. It really is kind of a
Yeah,
synopsis
it
of the
gives you
forum we put
strategy.
on, and it's really DE&I for dummies, if you if you will. It's so simple, and I think a lot of people get scared of it. They're going to think we're bad, and white people are bad, and people with privilege.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. They
No,
just don't
it's like,
know.
you know what? Sometimes we have to learn how to talk, how to say the right thing, because we don't know the history behind a
Yes,
lot of things that we say.
yes.
Nobody's saying master bedroom in the real estate world anymore. It's now the
Right.
primary.
Yeah.
These little things that we get to shift in our language to make our language more inclusive, and that'll draw more people to us and our business, because people will see our effort. It's just like going to France and trying to speak French. They
Mhm,
appreciate it.
mhm. Yeah, and I always say people would do better if they knew better, so they will.
Exactly.
They have to know. So thank you so much for joining us today at Speakers Magazine. The just having you here has just been really, really delightful. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. All right, Eva. Bye-bye. So that was Eva Medilek. You got her website down there, so make sure that you take note of that. I'm Pam Perry, and we're out.